My girlfriend said, "I'm using your sperm donor sample without consent. The clinic said they can't stop me. I donated before cancer treatment." I said, "That's illegal." Then I called my attorney, the clinic, and filed an injunction. When the clinic revealed she'd forged my signature on release forms. I, 31 male, was diagnosed with testicular cancer at 26. Stage IIB. Caught it late because I was a dumb 26-year-old who ignored symptoms for months, and by the time I went to a doctor, it had spread to a couple of lymph nodes. The treatment plan was aggressive. Surgery followed by 3 rounds of BEP chemotherapy. My oncologist sat me down before we started and told me very directly that chemo had a high likelihood of affecting my fertility. Could be temporary, could be permanent. No way to know until after. He recommended I bank sperm before treatment. I did. Went to a reproductive clinic, did the whole process, awkward waiting room, awkward cup, awkward everything, and banked 3 samples. Each one was cryopreserved and stored under my name with very specific consent forms. Those forms stated that the samples were MY property, that no one could access, use, transfer, or destroy them without MY written authorization, and that any release of samples require my signature on a separate release form at the time of the request. I read every page. I initialed every clause. Because I was 26 and facing the possibility that these frozen vials might be the only chance I'd ever have at biological children, and I was not about to let paperwork be the thing that screwed me. I beat the cancer. Took about 8 months of treatment and recovery, and the follow-up scans have been clean for 4 years. I'm technically in remission. I still go for checkups every 6 months. The chemo did affect my fertility. My sperm count post-treatment is extremely low. Not 0, but functionally close to it. My reproductive endocrinologist told me that natural conception would be extremely unlikely and that the banked samples were my best realistic option for having biological children someday. Those samples are, medically speaking, irreplaceable. I need people to understand that. There's no just make more. What's in that freezer is what I've got. Period. I started dating my girlfriend about 2 years ago. She's 29. We met through a friend of a friend at a birthday dinner. She was smart, driven, funny in a dry way that I liked. We connected fast. By about month 4, I told her about the cancer, the treatment, the fertility situation. I believe in being upfront about that stuff. If someone's gonna date me seriously, they need to know the full picture. She was great about it. Supportive, understanding, said all the right things. We'll figure out when the time comes. There are so many options. What matters is that you're here. I felt lucky. Over the next year and a half, the relationship got serious. We talked about the future, timelines for moving in together, whether we wanted kids, both yes, how we'd approach the fertility stuff when we were ready. I told her the samples were stored at the clinic and that when we decided, together, as a committed couple ready to start a family, we'd go through the proper medical and legal process. She nodded. She seemed to get it. About 3 months ago, she started bringing up kids more frequently. Not in the casual, someday way, but in the pointed, timeline-driven way. I want to be pregnant by 30. My sister just had her second, and I feel like I'm falling behind. We should start the process soon. I told her I wasn't ready yet. I wanted us to move in together first, get our finances aligned, maybe get engaged. Normal steps. She got frustrated, but seemed to accept it. She did not accept it. 2 weeks ago, she called me in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. I was at work. I'm a project estimator for a commercial construction company, so my days are spreadsheets and site visits. I stepped outside to take the call. Her. So I went to the clinic today. Me, what clinic? Her. Your fertility clinic. I went to start the process. Me, what process? Her. The insemination process. I gave them your name and told them I was your partner and that we decided to use one of your samples. They pulled up your file. My entire body went cold, standing in a parking lot in the sun, and I felt like I'd been dropped in ice water. Me, you did what? Her, I'm using your sample. We've talked about wanting kids. I'm tired of waiting for you to be ready, so I'm starting the process. Me, you can't just walk into a clinic and request someone else's reproductive material. That's not how this works. There are consent forms, legal requirements. I have to authorize it. Her, I already handled it. I filled out the paperwork and signed. Me, you signed MY consent forms? Her, they needed your signature on a release form. I signed it. It's fine. We're in a relationship. It's basically the same thing. I want to describe what I felt in that moment, but I genuinely don't have the words for it. It's somewhere between violation and terror. Those samples exist because I had cancer. They exist because a doctor told me I might never be able to have biological children, and I made the difficult, vulnerable decision to preserve that possibility. And this woman, someone I loved, someone I trusted with the most personal medical information I had, walked into a clinic and forged my name on a legal document to take that from me without my knowledge or consent. Me, that's forgery. That's illegal. And you cannot use my samples without my explicit, verified consent. Her, oh my God, you're being so dramatic. We're together. We want the same thing. I just moved up the timeline. Me, you forged my signature on a medical release form. Her, I signed your name on a form for something we both want. Stop making this into a crime. Me, it is a crime. And this conversation is over. Do not contact the clinic again. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat in my truck for about 20 minutes. Then I started making calls. Call 1, my attorney. I don't have a lawyer on retainer or anything fancy. I have a guy I used when I bought my condo 3 years ago. Real estate attorney. But he's smart and connected, and when I explained the situation, he said, "This is outside my area, but I know exactly who to call," and gave me the name of a reproductive law attorney. Yes, that's a real specialty. I didn't know either. Call 2, the reproductive law attorney. She answered. I explained the situation in about 3 minutes, and the line went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How long ago did she go to the clinic?" Me, today. A few hours ago. Her, has any procedure been performed? Me, I don't know. Her, we need to find out immediately. I'm going to draft an emergency communication to the clinic right now. What's the clinic name? I gave her the information. She said she'd have something to the clinic within the hour, and that I should also call the clinic directly. Call 3, the clinic. This is where it got complicated. I called the front desk and asked to speak with someone about my account. They transferred me to a patient coordinator. I explained that someone had come in claiming to be my partner and had signed a release form on my behalf without my knowledge or consent. The coordinator put me on hold for 11 minutes. I counted. When she came back, her tone had changed entirely. Very careful, very measured. "Sir, I need to let you know that we did receive a release form today with your name on it. The form authorized the release of 1 sample to your partner for an IUI procedure scheduled for next week." Me, I did not sign that form. I did not authorize that release. The signature is forged. Another long pause. Her, we're going to freeze this request immediately. No samples will be released. I need to escalate this to our compliance department and our legal team. Can we schedule you to come in tomorrow to verify your identity and review the documentation? Me, I'll be there at 8 a.m. I went home that night, and my girlfriend was at my apartment. She has a key. She was on the couch watching TV like absolutely nothing had happened. Like she hadn't committed forgery and attempted reproductive fraud 6 hours earlier. Her, did you eat? I was thinking we could order Thai. Me, I called the clinic. I called the lawyer. Your request has been frozen. Nothing is being released. Her face went through about 4 different expressions in 2 seconds. Her, you called a lawyer? Are you kidding me right now? Me, you forged my signature on a legal medical document. What did you think was going to happen? Her, I thought you'd see that I was serious about our future and stop dragging your feet. Me, our future doesn't start with you committing fraud. Her, fraud? I'm your girlfriend. I'm not some stranger off the street. We've talked about having kids together. I just took initiative. Me, initiative is booking a couple's counseling appointment. What you did is a felony in most states. I need my key back. She started crying. Told me I was overreacting. Told me I was weaponizing my cancer against her. That one, weaponizing my cancer, I want everyone to sit with that phrase for a second. She tried to use my bank's sperm without consent, and then accused me of weaponizing MY cancer. The audacity was almost artistic. She left. I changed my locks the next morning. More in the update, because this was just the beginning. Update 1. 8 days later. The response to the original post was intense. A lot of people shared their own fertility stories, and I want y'all to know I read those. This stuff is deeply personal, and the fact that people opened up meant a lot. Okay, here's what happened. Day 1 after the phone calls. I went to the clinic at 8 a.m., met with the compliance officer and a staff attorney. They had the release form pulled up on a screen. I looked at the signature. It wasn't even a good forgery. She'd signed my full legal name in her own handwriting, her bubbly, rounded script that looks nothing like my blocky print. She hadn't even attempted to replicate my actual signature. She'd just written my name, like she was signing a birthday card. The compliance officer confirmed that the form had been submitted in person by a woman identifying herself as my domestic partner. The intake staffer who processed it was a newer employee who, and this part is important, did not verify the signer's identity because the woman seemed to know details about the account. My ex knew my date of birth, my account number, which was on correspondence I'd left in a desk drawer of my apartment, and the approximate date of storage. The compliance officer looked deeply uncomfortable. She said, "We have a verification protocol for exactly this situation. Government-issued ID matching the account holder's name. It was not followed. That's a serious internal failure, and we are addressing it." My attorney had sent the clinic a formal preservation order letter overnight, basically a legal demand that all samples remain frozen and untouched, no exceptions, pending resolution. The clinic confirmed receipt and agreed to comply. Then the compliance officer told me something that changed the temperature of the room. I also want to make you aware that the release form your partner submitted authorized the use of one sample for an IUI procedure. The appointment was scheduled for 6 days from now. If this hadn't been flagged, the sample would have been thawed and prepared within 48 hours of the appointment. Once thawed, it cannot be refrozen. Let that sink in. If I hadn't called, if I brushed it off, if I believed her when she said it's fine, my sample would have been destroyed. One of 3 irreplaceable vials gone. Used without my knowledge or consent for a pregnancy I didn't authorize with a person who'd just committed forgery to make it happen. I asked the compliance officer to provide a written statement documenting the forged form, the failure to verify identity, and the timeline. She agreed. Day 3. My reproductive law attorney filed a formal complaint against my ex with the district attorney's office. In my state, forging a signature on a medical consent form is a felony. It falls under both forgery and fraud statutes. Additionally, attempting to obtain someone's reproductive material through fraud has specific protections under state reproductive rights law. My attorney told me my state was one of about a dozen that had recently strengthened these laws in response to exactly these kinds of cases. She also filed a civil motion for an emergency injunction, a court order legally barring my ex from contacting the clinic, accessing my account, or attempting to obtain my reproductive material through any means. The judge granted the temporary injunction the same day. It was served to my ex at her workplace because my attorney said workplace service was the most reliable way to confirm receipt. Apparently being served legal papers at your office in front of coworkers makes an impression, because within an hour of being served, my phone started blowing up. First, my ex from a new number. I blocked her. "You had me serve at work?" Everyone saw the process server. Do you know how humiliating that was? I screenshot it. Did not respond. Forwarded to my attorney. Then her mother called. I'd met this woman 3 times. Holidays and a birthday dinner. She seemed pleasant enough. That ended on this phone call. Her mom. "What is wrong with you? You have my daughter served with legal papers at her job? Over a baby? She wants to have your baby, and this is how you treat her." Me. "Ma'am, your daughter went to a fertility clinic, forged my name on a medical release form, and attempted to obtain my sperm samples without my knowledge or consent. Samples that exist because I had cancer. She didn't ask me. She faked my signature. That's forgery." Her mom. "She told me you two had agreed to start trying." Me. "We did not agree. She brought it up. I said I wasn't ready. She went behind my back." Her mom. "Well, maybe if you hadn't been stringing her along for 2 years, she wouldn't have felt like she had to take matters into her own hands." Me. "Take matters into her own hands. You're describing a felony and framing it as empowerment. Your daughter forged legal documents. That's not taking initiative. That's a crime. Her mom. You don't get to play victim here. She's the one who wants a family. You're the one who keeps stalling. Maybe the real question is why you don't want children with my daughter. Me. The real question is why your daughter thinks forgery is an acceptable way to get what she wants. This conversation is over. She called back twice. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "If you don't drop this legal nonsense, our family will make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are." I screenshot that too, because at this point, everything goes in the file. Day 5. My attorney received a call from my ex's attorney. She'd gotten one. Her lawyer's opening position was creative. He argued that because we were in a committed relationship and had discussed having children together, my ex had a reasonable expectation that the samples would be shared and that signing my name was an administrative shortcut, not fraud. My attorney's response, as she related to me: "Your client forged a signature on a medical consent form at a reproductive clinic. The form specifically requires the account holder's verified signature because these are irreplaceable biological samples stored due to a cancer diagnosis. There was no verbal agreement, no written agreement, no implied agreement. Your client acted unilaterally. I have the forged document, the clinic's internal report confirming the forgery, and a text message chain where your client explicitly states she went to the clinic without my client's knowledge. I'd recommend you advise your client to focus on the criminal matter because the DA's office has already been contacted." Her attorney asked if we'd consider dropping the criminal complaint in exchange for a civil settlement. My attorney asked me. I said no. This wasn't about money. This was about someone trying to take my reproductive future without my consent, and I wanted it on record. More in the final update. The criminal case and the clinic's response are where this all comes together. Update 2. Final. 22 days later. Last one. This has been the most draining month of my life, and I need to close this out. Let me pick up from where I left off. Her attorney tried to negotiate. We declined. The criminal complaint moved forward. But in between those 2 points, my ex pulled one more stunt that I think perfectly captures who she is. Day 8 after the original incident. My ex sent a long email from a new email address, since I'd blocked everything else, to 3 of my close friends. The email was a masterpiece of revisionist history. She told them that we'd been planning to have a baby together for months, that I'd given her verbal permission to start the process at the clinic, and that I was now using the legal system to punish her for moving forward with something we both wanted. She ended the email by saying, "I think you should know what kind of man your friend really is. He encouraged me to want a family, and then humiliated me with lawyers and police when I tried to make it happen." 2 of my friends sent me the email without comment and waited for my explanation. The third, my oldest friend, known him since high school, called me immediately and said, "Brother, this reads like someone who's terrified and rewriting history as fast as she can. What do you need from me?" I explained the full situation to all 3. Showed them the text chain where she explicitly said, "I went to the clinic and I signed it without any prior discussion or agreement." Showed them the injunction. Showed them the clinic's compliance report. Every single one of them said the same thing. "This is insane. We got your back." My ex didn't know it, but emailing my friends was a tactical mistake for 2 reasons. 1, it gave me 3 more witnesses who could testify that she was actively trying to construct a false narrative. 2, one of those friends works as an office manager at a law firm, not a lawyer himself, but someone who understands legal proceedings and immediately recognized her email as an attempt to tamper with potential witnesses. He flagged it to my attorney unprompted. My attorney added the emails to the file and noted them as evidence of consciousness of guilt. Legal speak for she knows she did something wrong and she's trying to cover her tracks. Day 12. The DA's office formally charged my ex. 2 counts. Count 1, forgery in the 2nd degree, knowingly signing another person's name on a legal document with intent to defraud. Count 2, attempted fraud, attempting to obtain property. Yes, reproductive material is legally classified as property in my state through deception. The forgery charge is a Class D felony. The fraud charge is a Class C felony. Combined, she was looking at potential prison time. Though my attorney told me realistically, with no prior record, she'd likely face probation, fines, and a permanent felony on her record if convicted. Her attorney reached out again after the charges were filed. This time the tone was different. Less, let's negotiate, and more, we'll make this stop. He proposed that my ex would plead guilty to a reduced misdemeanor charge, pay restitution for my legal fees, submit to a no-contact order, and agree to never contact the clinic again. My attorney asked what I wanted. I thought about it for 2 full days. Here's where I need to be honest with you about something. Part of me wanted to push for the maximum. The full felony charges. Trial. Conviction. Prison time. Because what she did wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate, planned assault on my reproductive autonomy. She researched the clinic. She found my account number. She drove there. She filled out forms. She forged my name. She scheduled a procedure. Each of those steps was a conscious decision to override my consent about the most personal thing I have left after cancer took so much from me. But another part of me, the exhausted, grieving, cancer survivor part, just wanted it over. I wanted my samples safe, my rights documented, and this person permanently out of my life. Pushing for a trial would mean months more of legal proceedings, testimony, reliving it publicly. My attorney was honest. A plea deal isn't justice in the poetic sense, but it's resolution. And resolution has value. I told her to counter with amended terms. Here's what we demanded. 1. She pleads guilty to misdemeanor forgery. Not no contest. Guilty. An admission, in court, on the record, that she forged my signature. 2. A 5-year restraining order. Not a no-contact agreement. A court-issued restraining order. She cannot contact me, my family, my friends, my employer, or any fertility clinic where I have stored samples. 3. Full reimbursement of my legal fees, $8,700. Every dollar. 4. She is permanently barred from accessing any reproductive clinic account associated with my name. This was a special condition my attorney drafted that required the judge's approval, and it's apparently unusual but not unprecedented in reproductive fraud cases. 5. She writes a formal letter of apology. Not to me, to the clinic. Specifically, to the newer employee who processed her forged form and who was put on administrative review because of the security failure my ex exploited. That staffer, a 23-year-old woman in her first year at the clinic, was nearly fired because of my ex's actions. I didn't want her to pay for someone else's crime. Her attorney pushed back on item 5, said it was unusual and unnecessarily humiliating. My attorney replied, "Your client's forgery put an innocent employee's job at risk. A letter acknowledging that is the minimum human decency we're requesting. Given that the alternative is 2 felony charges going to trial, I'd suggest your client find it within herself to write 3 paragraphs." They accepted all 5 terms. Day 19. The plea hearing. I was there. My attorney was there. My ex was there with her attorney. Her mother was in the gallery. Her father was not. I later heard he'd refused to come. Make of that what you will. The judge reviewed the plea agreement. He asked my ex directly, "Do you understand that you are pleading guilty to the charge of forgery? That you knowingly signed another person's name on a medical consent form at a reproductive clinic without that person's knowledge or authorization?" My ex, "Yes, Your Honor." That was it. 2 words. The smallest, quietest I'd ever heard her voice. No tears, no drama, no speech. Just yes. And in that yes was the legal acknowledgement of everything she'd done. The judge accepted the plea, sentenced her to 2 years probation, the $8,700 restitution, and all the conditions we'd specified. The restraining order was issued. The clinic bar was approved. The felony charges were dropped per the agreement, but the misdemeanor forgery conviction is permanent. It will appear on every background check for the rest of her life. After the hearing, in the courthouse hallway, her mother walked past me. She didn't speak, but she looked at me with pure contempt, like I'd done something unforgivable by holding her daughter accountable for forging my name on a medical document. The entitlement in that family runs deeper than I'll ever understand. In her mother's world, her daughter wanted a baby, and wanting a baby hard enough apparently justifies anything. I walked out of the courthouse, and sat in my truck in the parking garage. Same thing I did the night this started, just sat and stared and processed. My attorney had gone back inside to handle paperwork. I was alone. I called my oncologist's office. Not for a medical reason. I just needed to hear the nurse's voice, a woman who'd been with me through every chemo infusion, every blood draw, every terrifying scan. She picked up, and I said, "Hey, it's me. I just want to check on my next appointment." She said it was in 3 months and asked how I was doing. I said, "Better than last month." She said that's how it works. 1 month at a time. She doesn't know anything about the legal situation. She just knows me as a patient. But talking to her reminded me of something I'd been losing sight of through all the lawyers and hearings and courthouse hallways. I survived cancer. I survived the worst thing that's ever happened to my body. And the samples in that clinic, the ones my ex tried to steal, exist because I made a smart, careful decision at 26 years old to preserve my future. Those vials are still there. 3 of them, frozen and safe in mine. The clinic fired the compliance officer who oversaw the intake process. The younger staffer, the 23-year-old, was kept on after an internal review determined she'd been inadequately trained on verification protocols. My attorney confirmed that the apology letter was received by the clinic and forwarded to the staffer. I don't know what it said. I hope it was honest. I doubt it was. The clinic also overhauled their release procedures. 2-factor identity verification is now required. Government ID plus a biometric confirmation at the time of any sample release. My attorney said the clinic's own legal team had been pushing for this upgrade for years and that this incident accelerated the timeline. So something good came out of it, even if it came from something terrible. Here's where I am. I'm single. I'm tired. My condo is quiet in a way that used to feel peaceful and now sometimes just feels empty. I still have nightmares about the phone call, the one where she said, "I went to the clinic today," like she was telling me she'd gone to Target. The casualness of it, the absolute certainty in her voice that she was entitled to my biological material because she wanted a baby and I was taking too long to agree. That's what I keep coming back to. Not the forgery, not the legal battle, the entitlement. The belief that her desire for a child outweighed my right to consent. I have 3 vials in a clinic freezer. They're mine. They'll stay there until I decide, with the right person at the right time, that I'm ready. And ready means a mutual decision made by 2 people who respect each other enough to have the conversation first. My next oncology checkup is in 11 weeks. Still clean. Still here. That's the thing that actually matters. Thanks for reading. Protect your medical records. Protect your consent. And don't let anyone tell you that loving someone means they're entitled to your body.